Creating a purpose-driven life is not something that happens by accident. It is not something you stumble into when the stars align or when everything falls into place perfectly. It is something that you build intentionally, step by step, decision by decision, moment by moment, When you wake up in the morning, what drives you? What pulls you out of bed with energy and determination? What gives your day meaning beyond just going through the motions? These are the questions that separate a life lived by default from a life lived by design. A purpose-driven life is not defined by what you have, where you live, or what others expect of you. It is defined by the clarity of your mission, the strength of your resolve, and the depth of your commitment to something greater than yourself. Some people wander through life waiting for inspiration to strike, hoping that one day they will suddenly know exactly what they are meant to do. But that is not how purpose works. Purpose is not something you find. It is something you create. It is a decision you make every single day to live with intention, to act with conviction, and to align your choices with a vision that goes beyond the ordinary. The truth is, you do not need permission to live a purpose-driven life. You do not need a special sign from the universe, a grand moment of revelation, or a guarantee that everything will work out perfectly. All you need is the courage to take control. All you need is the willingness to ask better questions, to challenge old beliefs, and to commit to practices that transform the way you live. And that is where the power lies. Building a purpose-driven life is not about luck. It is not about waiting for the right circumstances. It is about adopting practices that change everything. Practices that shift your mindset, strengthen your resolve, and align your actions with the kind of life you want to create. Most people spend their lives reacting to circumstances, reacting to opinions, reacting to what is expected of them. But a purpose-driven life is built on something different. It is built on intention. It is built on clarity. It is built on the kind of deep, unwavering commitment that comes from knowing exactly why you are here, what you stand for, and where you are going. Every decision you make from this moment forward can either pull you closer to purpose or push you further away from it. Every action, every habit, every thought, you are either reinforcing the life you were meant to live or allowing distractions to pull you off course. So the real question is, are you ready to take control? Are you ready to stop waiting and start building? Are you ready to commit to a way of living that is no longer dictated by chance, but defined by choice? Because once you make that decision, once you decide that nothing will hold you back, once you commit to the practices that create transformation, you will never look at life the same way again. The first practice is mastery of self-awareness. Without self-awareness, you are living on autopilot. You are reacting to life instead of directing it. You are allowing old patterns, emotions, and external influences to dictate your decisions, instead of choosing with clarity and purpose. Most people think they know themselves. They think they understand their motivations, their strengths, their weaknesses. But if you truly knew yourself, you would not waste time on things that do not serve you. You would not fall into the same traps over and over. You would not let fear, doubt, or old conditioning control your life. Self-awareness is not just about knowing your likes and dislikes. It is not about being able to say, I am this type of person, or I am good at these things. It is about seeing yourself clearly in the moments of decision, in the heat of emotion, in the quiet reflections of your day. It is about understanding why you do what you do, why certain triggers set you off, why you spend time on things that do not move you forward. When you lack self-awareness, you operate based on assumptions. You assume you are making choices, but really, your choices are being made for you. You assume you are moving forward, but really you are stuck in patterns that repeat over and over. Think about the last time you reacted strongly to something. A situation, a comment, an unexpected event. How much of that reaction was truly you? And how much of it was the old version of you, the conditioned you, the you that is still holding onto past wounds, past fears, past beliefs? Self-aware people do not just react. They pause, they observe. They separate themselves from their emotions long enough to see what is really happening. They recognize this reaction is coming from fear. This frustration is rooted in something deeper. This habit is not who I want to be. It is just what I have always done. And here is the key. You cannot change what you do not see. You cannot improve what you are not aware of. You cannot build a purpose-driven life if you are living in denial about what is holding you back. Self-awareness is the foundation of transformation. It is where everything begins. Because once you see clearly, you can choose differently. Once you understand your patterns, you can disrupt them. Once you recognize the old beliefs that are holding you back, you can replace them with something stronger. So how do you develop self-awareness? It starts with honest reflection. Not the kind of reflection where you tell yourself what you want to believe, but the kind where you face the truth, where you sit quietly and ask, why did I act that way? What was I really feeling? What is driving this behavior? Most people avoid this kind of reflection because it is uncomfortable. It is easier to keep busy, to distract yourself, to keep running from the parts of yourself that you do not want to face. But every moment you avoid the truth is a moment you stay stuck. Self-awareness requires feedback. You cannot see yourself clearly if you are the only one looking. Sometimes you need an outside perspective, a trusted friend, a mentor, someone who can say, I see this in you, and I think it is holding you back. Someone who can help you see the patterns you are too close to recognize. But here's the challenge. Most people do not want feedback. They say they do, but deep down they resist it. Why? Because feedback is a mirror, and mirrors can be painful. They show you the parts of yourself you would rather ignore. But self-aware people, they seek feedback. They ask questions. They challenge themselves to see the truth, even when it hurts, because they know that every piece of information about themselves is a tool for growth. Then there is the practice of observation. Self-aware people do not just think about themselves in theory, they observe themselves in action. They notice their reactions in real time. They pay attention to what triggers them, what excites them, what drains them. They watch their own behavior as if they are studying a character in a book. Because here's the secret. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the observer of those things. And when you learn to separate yourself from the noise, you gain the power to change it. Self-awareness means understanding your values. Not the values you were taught to have, but the ones that are truly yours. What do you stand for? What is non-negotiable in your life? What kind of person do you want to be? Most people live by values they never chose. They follow what their parents taught them, what society expects, what tradition dictates. But purpose-driven people, they redefine their values. They decide for themselves what matters most. They align their actions with values that are deeply personal and powerful. And here's the truth. If your daily life does not reflect your values, you will never feel fulfilled. You will always feel like something is missing. You will always sense a gap between who you are and what you are doing. Self-awareness creates the clarity you need to close that gap. It tells you when you are off course. It reminds you when you are making decisions that betray your true self. It gives you the power to say, no, this is not who I am. I refuse to live that way. And this is where it gets real. Self-awareness is not just a nice idea, it is a responsibility. Because once you know the truth about yourself, you can no longer hide. You can no longer blame circumstances. You can no longer pretend that things will change if you do not change. Once you develop self-awareness, you are faced with a choice. You can either rise to the challenge and transform, or you can stay the same and live with the consequences. Here's the power of self-awareness. It allows you to take full control of your life. It allows you to stop drifting. It allows you to stop reacting and start deciding. Because once you see clearly, you cannot unsee. And that clarity becomes the foundation for everything else. It becomes the lens through which you make every decision. The filter that separates what is real from what is just noise. The inner compass that ensures you are always moving toward your true purpose. The second practice is taking radical ownership of every aspect of your life. Without ownership, you remain a victim of circumstance. You allow external factors to control your destiny. You let excuses, blame, and fear dictate your actions instead of claiming full responsibility for everything you create. Most people resist ownership. They say they want control, but deep down, they prefer to shift responsibility. It is easier to blame the past, easier to point fingers, easier to convince yourself that things are out of your hands. But that mindset will keep you trapped. It will keep you stuck in a cycle of frustration, disappointment, and helplessness. Purpose-driven people do not think that way. They do not waste energy blaming others. They do not spend time feeling sorry for themselves. They do not make excuses. Instead, they look at every situation and say, this is mine, this is my life, and I am in control. Taking ownership means recognizing that you are the one responsible for your results, not your parents, not your past, not your circumstances, you. When things go wrong, most people ask, why did this happen to me? But the owner asks, how do I make this work? When obstacles arise, the victim sees an excuse to give up. The owner sees an opportunity to grow. This shift in thinking changes everything. It changes how you approach problems. It changes how you deal with setbacks. It changes how you view yourself and your potential. Because when you take ownership, you stop waiting for things to change. You become the one who changes them. Ownership is not about blaming yourself for everything that goes wrong. It is about accepting that you have the power to change anything that is not working. If your relationships are falling apart, it is on you to fix them. If your career is going nowhere, it is on you to take action. If you are unhappy with your life, it is on you to make the necessary changes. Most people avoid this kind of ownership because it is uncomfortable. It is painful to admit that you are responsible for your own suffering. It is easier to believe that life is unfair, that people are against you, that you are destined to be stuck. But that belief is the very thing that keeps you trapped. When you take ownership, you reclaim your power. You stop seeing yourself as a victim. You stop waiting for permission. You stop hoping that things will magically get better. And here's the truth. If you do not own your life, someone else will. If you do not take control, the world will impose its will on you. If you do not decide what you want, other people will decide for you. Ownership is the practice that separates those who drift through life from those who direct it. It is what allows you to build momentum, to create change, to live with intention instead of reacting to whatever happens. And this is where it gets deep. Ownership is not just about actions. It is about mindset. It is about how you think, how you react, how you view the world. Owners do not make excuses. They do not waste time complaining. They do not let fear dictate their choices, because they understand that every moment is a new opportunity to take control. This is why self-awareness is so important. It lays the foundation for ownership. You cannot take responsibility for what you do not see. If you are not aware of your patterns, your triggers, your weaknesses, you cannot own them. You cannot change them. You cannot grow. But once you see yourself clearly, once you understand what is working and what is not, ownership becomes a natural next step, because you realize that the only way forward is through your own choices. Think about your daily life. How much of what you do is driven by ownership, and how much is driven by habit, fear, or external pressure? How many times do you make choices because you want to, and how many times do you let circumstances dictate your actions? The owner asks better questions. Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" they ask, "What can I do about it?" Instead of, "I can't believe this is happening," they say, "This is my opportunity to become stronger." And that is the key to transformation. When you take radical ownership, you shift from being a passive observer of your life to being the one who creates it. You shift from waiting for change to being the force that makes change happen. And here's the challenge. Once you commit to ownership, there is no going back. You cannot unsee what you have seen. You cannot pretend that things are out of your control when you know they are not. You cannot shift responsibility back to the past or to someone else. Because once you take ownership, you become unstoppable. You become the kind of person who no longer waits for life to happen. You make it happen. This is the power of ownership. It is the force that propels you forward. It is the mindset that transforms obstacles into opportunities. It is the decision that allows you to build a life of purpose, direction, and total control. The third practice is developing unwavering commitment to your purpose. Without commitment, purpose is nothing more than a passing idea. It is a dream that fades when obstacles arise, a vision that disappears when things get difficult. Most people have a shallow relationship with purpose. They say they want to live with meaning. They talk about their goals. They write down their dreams. But when life gets hard, they waver. They hesitate. They question everything. But purpose-driven people, they do not just have a purpose. They are committed to it. They do not just talk about their mission. They live it. They do not just set goals. They make a promise to themselves that nothing will stop them from achieving them. Commitment is what turns a casual interest into a powerful force. It is what separates those who try from those who succeed. It is what allows you to push through doubt, fear, and resistance when everything inside you wants to give up. Think about the things you have been truly committed to in your life. Maybe it was a relationship, a project, a goal that meant everything to you. When you are committed, nothing can shake you. When you are committed, setbacks are just temporary detours. When you are committed, your purpose becomes the driving force behind every decision you make. Most people do not understand this. They think commitment is something you feel, but commitment is not a feeling. It is a decision. It is a choice you make over and over, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Because here is the truth. There will be days when you do not feel like working. Days when you do not feel inspired. Days when the obstacles seem too big, the progress seems too slow, and the path ahead feels impossible. In those moments, your feelings will betray you. Your mind will tell you to stop. Your emotions will try to convince you that it is not worth it. But if you are truly committed, you do not listen to those voices. You push through anyway. You act in alignment with your purpose even when it is hard. And that is the difference between those who succeed and those who quit. Commitment is what keeps you moving forward when everything else is telling you to stop. Purpose-driven people do not negotiate with themselves. They do not wake up every morning and ask, do I feel like doing this today? They know that their purpose is non-negotiable. They know that their mission is bigger than their mood. They know that success requires consistency, not just inspiration. Most people operate on motivation. They wait until they feel like taking action. But motivation is unreliable. Some days you will be inspired. Other days you will feel nothing. And if your actions depend on motivation, you will never build momentum. Commitment, on the other hand, is a promise you make to yourself. It is a standard you hold yourself to. It is the internal resolve that says, no matter what happens, I will not waver. So how do you cultivate this level of commitment? It starts with clarity. You cannot be fully committed to something if you do not understand why it matters. If your purpose is vague, if your mission is unclear, if your goals lack specificity, it is easy to lose interest when things get tough. But when you are crystal clear on your purpose, when you understand its importance, when you feel its power, when you know exactly why it matters, you will do whatever it takes to protect it. Commitment requires ownership. If you do not own your purpose, it is easy to abandon it. If you see your mission as something outside of yourself, something that is dependent on luck, talent, or other people, you will never fully commit to it. But when you take ownership of your purpose, you protect it, you nurture it, you defend it against doubt, distraction, and fear. And here's the challenge. Once you commit, there is no turning back. You can no longer quit when things get hard. You can no longer make excuses when progress is slow. You can no longer let fear dictate your actions. Because commitment requires you to show up even when you do not feel like it. This is the power of commitment. It transforms your purpose from a wish into a reality. It turns your dreams into a mission. It shifts you from being a passive spectator of your life to being the force that drives it forward. Think about the people who have changed the world, the inventors, the leaders, the trailblazers. They did not succeed because they always felt inspired. They did not win because things were easy. They succeeded because they were committed, because they refused to quit, refused to back down, and refused to let anything stop them. And here is the truth. You have that same power. You have the ability to be unstoppable. You have the potential to build a life of purpose, passion, and relentless progress. But it starts with one decision. Will you commit fully? Will you stop wavering? Will you make your purpose non-negotiable? Because once you make that decision, once you fully commit, you will never look back. You will never question yourself again. You will never wonder if you are on the right path. You will know without a doubt that you are doing exactly what you were meant to do. The fourth practice is acting with unwavering consistency toward your purpose. Commitment without action is meaningless. You can say you are dedicated, you can believe in your mission, you can feel passionate about your goals. But if you do not take consistent action, nothing will change. Most people struggle with inconsistency. They start strong, but then they fade. They set big goals, but then they get distracted. They make promises to themselves, but then they allow excuses to take over. But purpose-driven people, they do not just commit, they act. Day in and day out, they show up. They do the work. They follow through. Consistency is what builds momentum. It is what transforms small efforts into massive results. It is what separates those who dabble from those who dominate. Because when you take consistent action, you create a force that cannot be stopped. Yeah. Think about the things you have been consistent with in your life. Maybe it was a job, a relationship, a habit that became second nature. When you are consistent, you do not question whether or not to show up. You do not waste time debating with yourself. You do not let anything stop you. You just do it. And that is how you build a purpose-driven life. Not by taking action once in a while, not by working hard only when you feel like it, but by making your actions automatic, by turning effort into a habit, by creating a system where showing up is non-negotiable. Most people fail because they rely on motivation. They wait until they feel inspired. They need a burst of energy to take action. But motivation is unreliable. Some days you will feel fired up. Other days you will feel nothing. And if your actions depend on motivation, you will never build the kind of momentum that leads to success. But purpose-driven people, they do not depend on motivation. They have systems, they have processes, they have routines that make action automatic. Because they understand that success is built on what you do consistently, not what you do once in a while. This is why habits are so powerful. When you turn something into a habit, you remove the need for willpower. You make it part of who you are. You shift from trying to do something to just doing it. And here's the secret. You cannot take consistent action without a clear plan. If your goals are vague, if your purpose is unclear, if you do not know exactly what to do each day, you will struggle with inconsistency. You will waste time. You will get distracted. You will fall back into old patterns. But when you have a clear, actionable plan, when you know exactly what needs to be done and when, you eliminate hesitation. You remove guesswork. You create a blueprint for success that makes consistency easy. Think about a well-oiled machine. It does not hesitate. It does not question itself. It does not slow down when things get tough. It just works day in, day out without stopping. That is how your life should operate once you commit to purpose. And this is where most people fail. They start strong, but when life gets busy, when obstacles arise, when progress feels slow, they stop being consistent. They make excuses. They let distractions take over. They negotiate with themselves about whether or not to follow through. But purpose-driven people, they refuse to negotiate. They do not give themselves choices. They do not wake up each day wondering if they should take action. They take action because it is part of who they are. And here's the truth. Once you make consistency a habit, success becomes inevitable. Once you commit to showing up every single day, the results will come. The momentum will build. The progress will become unstoppable. But most people never reach this point because they are too focused on short-term results. They want to see immediate progress. They want to feel like things are happening quickly. And when they do not, they get discouraged. They stop. They question themselves. But purpose-driven people understand that consistency is a long game. They know that small actions, repeated over time, create massive results. They know that progress is not always visible in the beginning, but that does not mean it is not happening. The key to building consistency is to remove emotion from the equation. Do not let how you feel dictate your actions. Do not let temporary setbacks derail your progress. Do not let distractions pull you off course. Because once you remove emotion, once you make action automatic, once you commit to showing up no matter what, you become unstoppable. You become the kind of person who does not just wish for success, but creates it consistently, day after day. And here is the challenge. Once you commit to consistency, you can never go back. You can no longer make excuses. You can no longer allow distractions to take over. You can no longer let fear dictate your actions. Because once you decide to be consistent, you become the force that transforms your life. This is the power of consistent action. It is what turns dreams into reality. It is what builds momentum. It is what separates those who talk about purpose from those who live it day in and day out without hesitation. The fifth practice is developing unshakable discipline in the pursuit of purpose. Without discipline, even the most passionate intentions will fade. You can have a clear purpose, you can be committed, you can take consistent action, but if you lack discipline, you will struggle to maintain momentum. Most people think discipline is about forcing yourself to do things you do not want to do. They see it as a struggle, a battle against laziness, an endless cycle of self-denial. But that is not discipline, and that is resistance. And resistance is what happens when you do not have a strong enough reason to act. True discipline is effortless. It is automatic. It is the internal power that drives you to take action, even when you do not feel like it. It is what allows you to push through distractions, stay focused on your goals, and keep moving forward, no matter what. Think about the most disciplined people in the world, the elite athletes, the top performers, the leaders who achieve extraordinary results. They do not wake up every day forcing themselves to work hard. They do not struggle with motivation. They do not waste energy debating with themselves about whether or not to take action. Discipline is built into who they are. It is the foundation of everything they do. And that is how you must approach purpose. Not as something you try to do when you feel like it, but as something that is non-negotiable, something that is automatic, something that you do regardless of how you feel. Most people approach their goals with a wishy-washy mindset. They say, I will try to be disciplined. I will work on my habits. I will do my best. But trying is not enough. Best efforts are not enough. You must decide fully, completely, without hesitation, that discipline is who you are. Because here is the truth. If you do not control yourself, someone else will. If you do not impose discipline on your actions, distractions, laziness, and fear will take over. If you do not develop the inner strength to follow through, you will always be at the mercy of your emotions. Discipline is what turns intention into action. It is what transforms goals into reality. It is what separates those who talk about purpose from those who live it day in and day out. And this is where most people fail. They start strong, but when the novelty wears off, when the excitement fades, when the hard work begins, they struggle. They let emotions take over. They fall back into old habits. They allow resistance to control them. But purpose-driven people, They do not let resistance win. They do not give in to distractions. They do not negotiate with themselves about whether or not to follow through. They have discipline. They have structure. They have a mindset that says, no matter what happens, I will not stop. So how do you develop unshakable discipline? It starts with removing emotion from the equation. Do not let how you feel dictate your actions. Do not let temporary setbacks derail your progress. Do not let distractions pull you off course. Because once you remove emotion, once you make action automatic, once you commit to showing up no matter what, you become unstoppable. And this is the challenge. Most people fail because they allow feelings to dictate their actions. They wake up one day feeling unmotivated, and suddenly they stop. They start questioning themselves. They begin doubting their purpose. But discipline says, I do not care how I feel. I do not need to feel inspired. I do not need to wake up excited. I just need to show up. And here's the secret. Once you develop discipline, everything becomes easier. You no longer struggle with procrastination. You no longer waste time making excuses. You no longer fall off track when life gets busy. Discipline becomes the force that keeps you moving forward, no matter what. Think about the things you are already disciplined in. Maybe it is a job, a routine, a habit that has become second nature. When you are disciplined in something, you do not question it. You do not negotiate with yourself. You do not waste energy deciding whether or not to take action. You just do it. And that is how you build a purpose-driven life. Not by forcing yourself to work hard, not by struggling to stay motivated, but by making discipline a part of who you are. Because here is the truth. If you can be disciplined in your purpose, nothing can stop you. If you can train yourself to act consistently, even when you do not feel like it, you will achieve things most people only dream of. This is the power of discipline. It is the force that turns dreams into reality. It is the internal strength that allows you to push through resistance, stay focused on your goals, and keep moving forward no matter what. And here's the challenge. Once you commit to discipline, you can never go back. You can no longer make excuses. You can no longer allow distractions to take over. You can no longer let fear dictate your actions. Because once you decide to be disciplined, you become the force that transforms your life. This is the power of consistent action. It is what turns dreams into reality. It is what builds momentum. It is what separates those who talk about purpose from those who live it day in and day out without hesitation. The sixth practice is cultivating deep resilience in the pursuit of purpose. Without resilience, setbacks become the end of the road. Challenges become reasons to quit. Failures become proof that you are not cut out for this. Most people struggle with resilience. They expect the path to be smooth. They hope things will go perfectly. They believe that once they commit to purpose, everything will be easy. But that is not how life works. Purpose-driven people know this. They understand that the journey will be filled with obstacles, that progress will be slow at times, that there will be moments when everything seems to be going wrong. And instead of being surprised by that, they prepare for it. They train themselves to bounce back, to keep going, to turn setbacks into stepping stones. Resilience is what allows you to stay focused when things get tough. It is what stops you from giving up when progress is slow. It is what enables you to keep moving forward, even when the universe seems to be pushing against you. Think about the most resilient people you know, the ones who refuse to be beaten down, the ones who keep rising no matter how many times they fall. They do not avoid struggle. They embrace it. They know that every challenge is an opportunity to grow stronger. And that is how you must approach purpose. not as something that will be easy, but as something that requires you to develop unbreakable resilience. Because without resilience, every obstacle will feel like a reason to stop. Most people fail because they expect perfection. They imagine that once they find their purpose, everything will fall into place. But when things get hard, when they face resistance, when they feel overwhelmed, they start doubting themselves. They question their purpose. They wonder if they are cut out for this. But purpose-driven people do not think that way. They expect challenges. They know that discomfort is part of the process. They understand that resilience is the key to long-term success. And here is the truth. Resilience is not something you are born with. It is something you develop. It is a skill that is built through experience, through struggle, through the decision to keep going when everything inside you is screaming to stop. So how do you build resilience? It starts with changing your relationship with failure. Most people see failure as a dead end, something that proves they are not good enough. But purpose-driven people see failure as feedback, as a lesson, as a necessary part of the journey that gets them closer to success. This shift in perspective is crucial, because if you see failure as the end, you will never take risks. You will never push yourself. You will never go all in on your purpose. But if you see failure as a stepping stone, as a sign that you are learning, as proof that you are trying, you will become unstoppable. Resilience requires emotional strength. Most people let emotions dictate their actions. They feel discouraged and stop. They feel overwhelmed and retreat. They let fear guide their decisions instead of using fear as fuel. But purpose-driven people train themselves to separate emotion from action. They acknowledge their feelings, but do not let their feelings control them. And this is where the power of discipline comes in. Because discipline is what allows you to act even when you do not feel like it. Discipline is what keeps you moving forward when resistance is high. Discipline is what transforms temporary setbacks into permanent gains. Think about the things you are already resilient in. Maybe it is a job, a relationship, a sport, a skill that took years to develop. When you are resilient in something, you do not let obstacles stop you. You do not let setbacks define you. You keep pushing, keep learning, keep growing, no matter what. And that is how you build resilience and purpose, by treating every challenge as an opportunity, by viewing every setback as a lesson, by training yourself to keep going even when the path is steep and the progress feels slow. There will always be distractions pulling you away from what matters. There will always be noise, pressure, and uncertainty challenging your clarity. And there will always be moments where giving up feels easier than moving forward. But if you've made it this far, it means something in you is ready to live differently. Not just with more intention, but with more depth. Not just with more goals, but with more meaning. The life you're building isn't built in one day. It's shaped through 1,000 moments. Moments of discipline, of courage, of decision. And every time you show up with purpose, every time you act with clarity, every time you choose growth over comfort, you shift the trajectory of your life. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to move quickly. You just need to keep moving, intentionally, honestly, and relentlessly. Because progress doesn't come from perfect execution. It comes from refusing to quit. Purpose is not something you reach. It's something you live. It's something you practice. It's something you breathe into everything you do. The way you speak, the way you work, the way you lead, the way you keep going, especially when it's hard. So now is your time. Not someday, not later, not when it's easier. Now start where you are. Use what you have. Choose who you want to be. And then build that version of you every single day. Because once you live with purpose, you will never again settle for anything less.